Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader, and tonight we'll be focusing on the Egyptian efforts to be alleviating the suffering of the Palestinians in the Palestinian territories, and more specifically in the Gaza Strip, as we did see a number of steps taken by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the political leadership in Egypt in the past week, among them to be brokering a ceasefire between the Israelis and the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, to be reopening the Rafah border crossing in the past week, exceptionally for the injured Palestinians to be treated in Egypt, and to be delivering, on the other hand, Egyptian aid to the Palestinians on the other front. And the $500 million that were allocated by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Egypt to be reconstructing Gaza in the near future. As following those steps, we did see President of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, thanking President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and the number of world leaders hailing the efforts and the steps taken by Egypt to be alleviating the suffering of the Palestinians following the aggression of Israel for 11 days on the Gaza Strip. To be focusing on those efforts and those steps in the past week, I'm honored to be having with me in the studio tonight on the Daily Debate Ambassador Jailan Allam, the former Assistant Foreign Minister. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is all mine. We'll be starting straight away with a report about the meeting of the security delegation sent by Egypt to the Palestinian territories and Israel, to be confirming the truce and the ceasefire brokered by Egypt in the past few days. We'll be having more information about that step, and we'll be returning once again to you on the Daily Debate, so stay tuned.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas on Saturday received the Egyptian security delegation visiting Ramallah in the wake of the Egypt-brokered ceasefire that went into effect in Gaza on Friday. Abbas thanked President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi for the efforts that Egypt has made in the way for de-escalation and the reconstruction of Gaza. Abbas briefed the delegation on the latest developments of the situation in the Palestinian lands. Abbas and the delegation discussed the developments related to the de-escalation in the Gaza Strip, occupied Jerusalem and the West Bank. They also coordinated on the reconstruction efforts in Gaza. Abbas hailed the Egyptian efforts aiming to restore the political path to end the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian state. The delegation conveyed President Sisi's greetings to the Palestinian president and people. Regional and international parties welcomed the ceasefire that was reached as a result of the Egyptian efforts exerted during the past period. American President Joe Biden on Thursday thanked President Sisi and hailed the efforts exerted by the Egyptian senior politicians to reach a ceasefire in Gaza in remarks from the White House. The Egyptian-sponsored ceasefire deal has been reached between Israel and the Palestinian factions to end an 11-day military operation in the Gaza Strip. Few hours after reaching the ceasefire, Egypt sent two security delegations which are set to monitor the ceasefire to the Palestinians and Israelis to consolidate the Egyptian brokered ceasefire and to ensure that none of the two sides would breach it in the future. The Egyptian initiative includes training young Palestinian cadres and developmental programs in order to become acquainted with the latest developments in management, leadership, and technology.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. Ambassador Jailan Allam, how did you see the latest developments in the Palestinian territories, and more specifically after the Egyptian brokered truce or the ceasefire in Gaza in the past 2 days?
I think that this is a very sad time for all of us around here in this part of the world, at least. This is another evolution of the situation, of the very critical situation prevailing between the Palestinians and the Israelis. There has been a lot of grief around regarding this latest incident, and I think that we all all here in Egypt, and I think among the Palestinian factions and among the Arab countries and among the Muslim countries, Islamic world, and actually around the world, who speaks so highly of human rights, Palestine is the last enclave of occupation in the world. There are no more occupiers in the world of other people territories.
Yes.
So I think the world has to come to a stand, take a deep breath, and rethink what exactly and why exactly have we missed this place, and why did we put it aside on the back burner and never thought of retrieving the rights of the people of Palestine. I think that the world needs to think. We have been monitoring this very closely, and I think that we took the right decisions at the right moment in a very efficient, transparent, and target-oriented way. So I think we should be proud of what Egypt has taken, and its leadership has taken as decision in this regard.
Yes, a lot of world leaders and citizens here in Egypt and the Arab world have hailed the involvement of Egypt, or the interaction of Egypt, to be going into a ceasefire and brokering the ceasefire between the Palestinians and the Israelis on Thursday night or Friday morning. Is this another triumph for the Egyptian diplomacy and the politicians?
That is definitely so, and it's very important that in diplomacy that you choose the right moment, the right moment to do the efficient step, and to do it in a very clear-cut way, because this is what we have been doing actually. We have been saying immediate ceasefire and mutual, so nobody goes. So this is it, and it was, I think it was a two-word decision to and call to take the ceasefire decision. And at the same time, we are not leaving behind those who were affected, who were the victims of this aggression.
Yes.
And Egypt has voluntarily announced, the president has, and actually he did this from Paris when he was in the meetings with the Paris meetings with President Macron. So, I mean, the situation has been very closely monitored, and reactions have been prepared, I think, and expected and delivered at the proper moment. So I think we are working very well in this regard, and I think we saved a lot of blood and a lot of lives. Sorry for the lives who went. I mean, there are around 250 Palestinians that lost their lives, yes, and around, I think, 1,900 who were injured. And this is a lot of casualties in supposedly two factions that are supposedly preparing for negotiations. But I think that there was a need for an incitement, a revival of the almost closed, cold kind of decision, and look at the situation now and the reactions we are seeing across the world. And I think that the Palestinians and the Arabs, and I think Egypt is properly leading that effort to revitalize the negotiations between Israel and not only, I hope, that not only for effectuating a truce and a ceasefire and a truce,
yes,
but actually to restarting a very serious, action-oriented negotiations towards the two-state solution.
And this emphasized the role of Egypt at
Absolutely.
The current phase under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, specifically after the phone call that took place between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the American President Joe Biden. How do you see the importance of, as you've mentioned, Ambassador Jailan, Allam, the timing of the decision following this call?
Actually, I mean, I was very surprised as a diplomat of the quiet and silence that the United States has undertaken as a procedure. I mean, I think they raised the flag that Israel has the right to defend itself, but to what extent, within which limits, and why? Why do we reciprocate firework in this fashion? I think I have another way to look at this. The Israeli press called this 11-day aggression on Gaza, so to speak.
Yes.
It called it Operation Guardians of the Wall. So actually, this is not an attack that resulted in a simultaneous and an immediate reaction. Actually, there was a preparation for this kind of situation. So if this happens, this is what we are going to do. Because Israeli sources say 60 high-profile personalities from the Palestinians have been eliminated. So much, 16, I think 1,600 or so buildings have been abated. So and so, I mean, they have been counting this. So, and naming a situation and naming an operation that took place with so much it's not over 2-3 hours or 2-3 days. It's an 11 days thing. And having a name, an earlier name for it, I think it was some kind of put on the stage and
It's
prepared.
a plan. It's a plan.
It's a plan, and it was prepared, and we were waiting again for the right moment to achieve those targets. So I think, actually, I'm very much inclined to think that there was an incitement intended during Al-Aqsa Mosque. Because even after the 12 days and after the truce, again, another excitement this Friday was against the prayers, the Palestinian prayers at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So there was an intention of continuation, but I think the Palestinians have taken good notice of what happened before and didn't let them repeat this kind of an action again, which I think is appreciated. And this is the way I think that the Palestinian leadership and the Palestinian have to think wisely, learn about your enemy, and don't fall into the traps that are set for you.
Speaking of the reaction of the United States and the reaction of the American President Joe Biden, do you think that it is contradictory to what could have been under the leadership of the former American President Donald Trump?
Definitely. I think these are two different parties, two different schools of diplomacy, two different approaches to the U.S.-Israel relations.
Yes.
I think the 4 years of President Trump were a bonanza for Israel. I think that President Biden also did not fail to express very openly his open and unlimited, uninhibited support for Israel. I think this is a standard, and I think we should not ever think otherwise. U.S. support for Israel. But I think maybe President Biden is more inclined to more quiet diplomacy. So actually, I think there was a lot of fear among the international community of where this encounter is going to lead. And I think that we have seized the right moment, to prevent the happening of eventually a lot of the foreign press was expecting a war, and a regional war in the area. So I think the very wise and very well-studied and well-approached, well-informed steps taken by the Egyptian leadership have avoided the area an overall war open, because we have seen some rockets fired from Syria, we have seen some rockets starting to fire from Lebanon, and there was a reaction, an Israeli reaction to that. So I think that blocking this kind of going ahead with this kind of action, I think avoided the area a very serious repercussion of whatever happened in there. And the world, I think, is appreciating that. I think the world is appreciating it, because you don't see, for example, from most of the Arab countries, we don't see an immediate reaction to what happened on the ground. Actually, everybody was holding their breath until the decision was taken. It was respected by both parties, even after 11 days, but it was respected. There was a time limit, 2 a.m., Friday morning, no more, finished, mutual. So the respect for that, I think, tells us that the Egyptian decision was taken seriously and was respected, and I think we should be very proud of that.
One of the decisions taken by Egypt in the past week during the participation of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the summits in France for the helping of Africa and Sudan is the allocation of $500 million for the reconstruction of Gaza. How do you see such a decision, not just for the Palestinians, but the international reaction to this decision?
Well, let me tell you this. We have to always look at the humane face of Egypt. So Egypt is not, I mean, the Egyptian diplomacy is not only based on direct interests, and that's all. I mean, fair enough. I mean, we have to build it on this. But I think there is also a humane side of it. There is some kind of a responsibility towards some cases. Africa, we always have held a decent approach and a responsible approach vis-à-vis Africa. We have always taken a decent and humane approach vis-à-vis the Palestinian question, not only on the humane side, but on the political side also. Any Arab country, I mean, look, I mean, we are a country of 100 million and we are facing a pandemic, the corona pandemic, and yet we are sending jabs to African countries, to some Arab countries, and we said that we will produce it here in Egypt so that we can provide Africa, because we can see in Europe that they are asking for jabs for the next 3 years. And that gives us an indication that there is a possibility, a potential
waves
that it stays with us. So we have been smart enough again to start producing this for ourselves and for others. So on this side, I think this is part of the vision of the diplomacy of Egypt. Why should we? Because after what happened in Gaza, I think it is fair enough, and it's the least we can do is to provide not only Egypt, but actually the whole Arab area. There are a lot of high-income countries, and therefore they should be able to provide a very serious assistance to the people in Gaza, to the Palestinian cause. Actually, I see that this is a golden opportunity to reopen the Palestinian issue altogether. When is Palestine going to have a country that is member of the United Nations, not at the PLO, an observer, but a Palestine to have a seat in the United Nations? When are we going to see this? We would like to see this. This has been dwelling since 1947, Resolution 181 of the United Nations, 1947. That is almost for 74 years. So I think it's about time that we revitalize and we revive the issue and start discussing it. The odds are different from what it was in 1947. Very, very, very different. And I think that the more Israel is going to stay and continue to see that the area, the countries of the area, to see that the world is not giving a serious look at what it is doing in terms of human rights, in terms of infringement on the rights of the Palestinians, in terms of economic potential and economic for the prospects for the Palestinians, I think that the world has been doing a mistake and should actually revitalize and relive its responsibility. We are in a very difficult world, in very difficult times. I mean, if the wealthy countries in the world are facing difficulties, what about people who are facing daily difficulties, who are under occupation, who can't find a job, and whose country is being just scaled down to earth? I think we have to return to our humanity and our decency and our reason. And this is what Egypt is trying to convey to the world by doing. We are not the richest country in the world or the highest income per person in the world, but we have decided we will allocate 500 million, not even Egyptian pounds, but $500 million for the reconstruction and rehabilitation of the Gaza Strip.
Yes, the Palestinian cause throughout its history always had the support of Egypt, but how do you think it evolved? This support has evolved under the political leadership of President Sisi and Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry.
Well, as we can see, the president has always been talking about, even in this last meeting in Paris,
yes.
He has been talking about it and he dedicated that. But let me give you just a very small indication, very vibrant indication to what this decision and these actions by Egypt have been. The Security Council met within 3 days to try to get a UN Security Council resolution on the ceasefire. The United States vetoed 3 times, 3 statements that were supposed to come out of the Security Council. And who called the Security Council? It was France and Tunisia who called on the Security Council to convene to study the issue of the Palestinian aggression by Israel.
Yes.
So if this is happening in this way by one permanent member of the Security Council and another Arab country who is a member of the Security Council, I think we have to know that what we have been doing is on the right track, the right target, and it achieved its target. And we have a statement by the Security Council calling for immediate negotiations around the ceasefire. And we have 2 teams, one in Israel and one in Ramallah and Gaza, trying to work first with the parties concerned and then trying to bring them together to talk and then come to the negotiating table to discuss this. We should say this as a prelude, and it should be prepared as a prelude to extensive overall negotiations regarding the causes of all this and how we should, and if we are going to this, not to really to agree on the causes of all this, but I think we should agree and we should be put on the agenda that there is a target here, that 2-state solution is what is accepted by the world, what is accepted even by the United States. So I think, and Egypt seems to be a good place to start doing this. We have done this many, many times. We have the Cairo, the MENA House, and so on, decisions and negotiations. I think we can do that, and we should be doing that, and I think we're ready to undertake that role.
Why do you think the Egyptian brokered ceasefire was swiftly accepted by Hamas and the Israelis without any preconditions now?
I think that both suffered casualties, strong casualties, and they didn't see the point in continuing in this except that they will suffer more casualties. And maybe some other parties would use that action to intervene in a negative way, in a destructive way. So I think both parties realized that better to stop and accept the earlier casualties rather than continue and accept more casualties and involvement, and then raising the temperature and the pressure in the Arab world so that you see an overall war. I don't think that Israel likes to see that it is going into a war from different parties around it. I don't think so. And I think also that the United States was very concerned that this situation might evolve. We have to see how President Biden is looking at the world. He's getting out of Afghanistan. He's getting out of Iraq. President Biden doesn't want any more soldiers, American soldiers abroad. He doesn't want any more wars. I think with the economic depression in the world, you don't want wars, you want business, you want investment, you want a world that is hopeful and looking forward to the future. You don't want this kind of destructive
But aren't
intent.
most of those decisions were taken by the previous administration?
I'm not sure. I am not sure that would have been the decision. Actually, I don't think so. I think that the previous administration would have maybe gone rash and maybe enforced or pushed and encouraged the Israelis go for it, Benji or what the way. But you would have found that some institutions in the United States, and this was happening during the last year, I think, of President Trump administration, the last year, that a lot of other institutions were interfering with his decisions and maybe even going against it. Maybe not loudly, but I think preparing for the next administration. And otherwise, I think President Trump wouldn't have lost the election if he was going the right way for America. Though he claimed America first. But yes, America first, with fairness, with dignity, without interference here and there. And but I think that the standard position of the United States is always to support Israel in whatever it does. But this is understood. But I think how to do it, how to exemplify it, how to perform it, how to deal. Because I think in even the Wall Street Journal, which is very much inclined towards extreme right, let us say,
yes,
even they praised Egypt. I mean, in I think it was today's edition, they praised Egypt a decision to undertake this role and to say, let's stop here and let's not go forward. And I think that part, that President Sisi of the 500 million for rehabilitation was some kind of a roundabout way of saying, let's stop here, let's work. And this is why President Biden said, United States will help the Palestinians rebuild, but with the help or under the helm of the United Nations. He doesn't want it to be an American support for Palestine, a direct one. Again, this is under the larger umbrella.
Do you think that there are guarantees that the ceasefire would be holding up between both sides?
If they are wise enough, they would. I think this is the wiser thing to do. I think that negotiations between the two parties, I mean, it has been holding for 3 days now, at least. So this is one part of it. But I think that the negotiations between the two parties through an Egyptian mediation will tell us whether this is going to be recurrent or not. I think that the lessons are here for everybody to look at. I think that the general tendency of the countries who are even supportive of Israel, friendly with Israel, are telling them, maybe behind curtains, behind closed doors, let us keep it quiet. Let's keep it. Let's be. I mean, administer mind and well-studied decisions. I think Europe is telling this to Israel, and I think that those around the Arab countries who are having connections and contacts with Israel, I think they are telling them the same thing, so that things do not get more heated or just driven to violence anymore.
The Egyptian brokered ceasefire, as I've mentioned, is seen as a diplomatic triumph for the Egyptian diplomacy and the politicians. On the other hand, Hamas sees what happened as the resistance against the Israeli forces. Do you see it that way, a triumph for the Hamas factions?
I think that we have to give some credit to Hamas for keeping up against the Israeli reaction and aggression on Gaza.
Yes.
And we should not discredit them to that effect. I don't think it's wise politically or diplomatically, or even as a running faction in it's a fait accompli. They are staying in Gaza, and I think we should actually enter into dialogue with them. What do you want to see next? What is it that we can together do next? So that this would be part and parcel of any negotiations that will come. There should be, I mean, if we are talking about two-state solutions, you cannot be at war and at odds all the time with that other party that you want to live in. I don't expect Israel at all to respect any agreement or any accord or any, I mean for the last more than they have never listened or respected any decision taken by any organ in the world, the United Nations, the Security Council, or any of that.
Yes.
But I think that getting into in animosity mode all the time is not the right. We have to stand on our feet, we have to stand by our rights, but in a wise, well-informed, well-established, all the time we are talking about the international law, the international legal system, about human rights, about political rights, basic rights. And this is what I think this should be really the determinants of the next phase to come between the Arab-Israeli or Palestinian-Israeli relations.
The international backlash that took place all over the world by the world leaders, by the United Nations and the citizens as well on the streets of every country and even electronically on social media against Israel. Do you think that this put pressure on the Israelis to be stopping the shelling and accepting the ceasefire?
Actually, there are some factions in Israel itself. I mean, we have seen through social media. I mean that even some of the Orthodox Jews in Israel have called. They said, "Why do you do this?" I mean, I was surprised to see that some of them say, I mean, Judaism never asked for a state called Israel. So I mean, this should be a minority. But most of the Jews and Israelis and the world likes to see Israel continuing. We don't have a problem. We have a peace treaty. We don't have a problem with that. But I think that we have to stick to a point where we see that real negotiations. I think we have created a good momentum for negotiations to go on from this moment. The world is with us, is supporting us, is supporting. The world wants this step to be taken. The world will help. The Secretary General of the United Nations himself called for a ceasefire. The Security Council, the United Nations Security, called for a ceasefire, enhanced a ceasefire, and that should be agreement between the parties, and there should be negotiations for that. I think the European Union itself expressed support for the ceasefire and called for negotiation. I think we should build on that, create the momentum, and I think this has created that good momentum for the parties. And I think Egypt is ready to play a very distinctive role in this area. We are very well qualified. I mean, we have been able to see this coming through. And this is why our teams were ready as soon as it broke out. We sent our teams to the parties to occupied territories and to Israel. So we are very close watchers of what is going on. And I think we have a good sense of how to speak to that. And we should not miss that opportunity, I think, and the world should not miss that opportunity.
The pressure against Israel, even as I've mentioned on social media, how far can it go to be successful, ending the blockade? According to the Hamas demands to be reopening the border crossings, to be reconstructing Gaza, how far could it be going against Israel?
I think they are living one of their best moments now, seeing that everything is destructed for Gaza. Things are becoming very difficult for the Palestinians. They don't have water, they don't have electricity. Their homes, half of their homes are down, grounded. So I think they are living a very happy moment for the Israelis now, and they feel proud and happy and victorious. But how does the world see victory look like? I mean, do you build your victory on the misery of others? Is that the way Israel sees that its victory has been achieved? I think that the social media has been very critical of Israel, and even in, I mean, I look at the social media, I look at you know, things that people exchange, kind of jokes and so on, even coming from European countries and European citizens. I don't think that's something that Israel should be very proud of. I think that a lot of Jewish communities also in the world and in the United States are trying to tell, just don't do it. Don't go that far. Don't go further in abating and in claiming victory. And so I think our press and our media should also be working on this, to bring this. I'm not so sure that the Palestinians are very able, or were able so far, to convey that message of, we are here to stay, and this is our country, and we want it, and we want to live in peace. I think there is much more effort that has to be done in this regard, and we have the good moment and we have the good basis to build on that.
Yes, and we return to the efforts of Egypt into be alleviating the suffering of the Palestinian citizens, and more specifically in the Gaza Strip, reopening the Rafah border crossing exceptionally, according to the directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, to be treating the injured of the Palestinian citizens in the Gaza Strip, and having the Egyptian aid entering to the other front or to the other side of Palestine. We'll be having more information about these steps taken in the past week to be alleviating the suffering of the Palestinian citizens in the Gaza Strip in the upcoming report.
Egypt sent on Friday a massive relief convoy grouping 130 laden trucks to the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Presidential spokesman Bassam Rodi said that trucks laden with 2,500 tons of foodstuff, medicines, baby formula, clothes and appliances are provided by the Long Live Egypt Fund to the Palestinian people. He said that sending the convoy comes in line with the directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to offer all support to the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Earlier last week, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi announced during his visit to France $500 million in reconstruction aid to Gaza, where more than 200 people have been killed by deadly Israeli strikes since May 10. Bassam Rodi said that Egyptian companies will carry out the work. Meanwhile, Minister of Health Hala Zaid also announced that the shipment of medical aid worth 14 million Egyptian pounds, including 65 tons of surgical supplies, have been sent to Gaza. The Minister of Health added that 11 hospitals, including 6 in Cairo, with a capacity of more than 900 beds and more than 3,600 doctors and nurses, have been mobilized to treat the injured Palestinians. President al-Sisi also ordered the reopening of Rafah-Gaza border to allow the transport of the wounded from Gaza to hospitals in Egypt. An Egyptian-sponsored ceasefire deal has been reached between Israel and the Palestinian factions to end the 11-day military operation in the Gaza Strip. It came into effect as of Friday, May 21st at 2300 GMT Palestinian time.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. Ambassador Jailan Allam, the former Assistant Foreign Minister, as we've seen in the past report, 130 trucks going from Egypt to Palestine and the Gaza Strip, carrying medicine, aid, food, and everything from the fund of Tahya Masr. How do you see this step seen by the Egyptians, by the Palestinians, and by the world?
It's, we should be very proud of what we're doing. I mean, again, we are not the richest country in around here,
yes,
but yet we feel responsible and we act accordingly. So if we are sending this 3,000 tons of medical supplies, food, and so on to the Palestinian territories through the Rafah, like you mentioned, the Rafah crossing point, I think this is the least thing we could do. I mean, we have to support these people. We have 2 million individuals living in Gaza, and they have been bombarded for the last 12 days and sitting without water, without electricity for after the bombardments also another 3-4 days now. So I think the least we can do is to provide them with this. Do we like to see some of our people? They're our neighbors at the end of the day.
Yes.
They are our next door neighbors, and we have relations of marriage, of interconnection. We have been forever neighbors here. So I think this. And then our belief that they have a cause, that we should help them upkeep. I think we owe this, and we like to do it. We enjoy doing it. I think everybody else has been appropriately thanking Egypt for doing so and so, but I think there is a point. We don't do it because we are expecting others to but
not for our own interests.
It's for our own interest, moral obligation of Egypt, feelings toward the Palestinian people. I would have liked very much that during these 12 days of atrocities, and that other countries would have prepared. I mean, like what they do when there is a flood or there is a volcano eruption or so on. I mean, where are the countries of Europe in this? Where are the other Arab countries, each in his way, each country according to what is available to them? Where is that? I like to see more international connection and more international preparations and reparations during this. I mean, in a world that speaks all the time about human rights, these are victims of a war. Why aren't we helping them? We help them. And I should certainly hope that other countries feel the same responsibility that we have felt and have the same feelings, humane feelings we have had, and help the Palestinians go through these very harsh and difficult times.
Speaking of the steps that Egypt had taken in the past week to be alleviating the suffering of the Palestinians, how can this be built on to be opening dialogue between the Palestinians and the Israelis once again?
I think it will come. I think it will be coming, and I think that we are preparing for that, and the Palestinians are willing. But here again, there will be, I think, the hiccup of who is going to speak, because even the Americans said, we will extend assistance to the Palestinian, the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, because we do not want to deal with Hamas, which is a terrorist group. All right. So now we will have, the Palestinians will have to be smart enough, wise enough to come together on this, so that the world sees them as one team. I mean, the Israelis have been telling everybody all the time, we have no partners to discuss with, we have no partners to negotiate with. We don't have any partners, Palestinian partners, who are we going to make the negotiations tenfold more? So I think this is a moment of truth for the Palestinians to come together and put their cards on the table and say, this is what we want and we would like to have it. I think this is the moment.
So there is hope in reviving the peace process.
Absolutely. And even if there are some difficulties from some parties, I think that Egypt is ready for that and will undertake to smoothen the tempo and the tempers to go through that kind of, because this is the right moment for it.
Do you think we should be expecting other provocations by the Israeli side in the upcoming days, despite the ceasefire?
Well, it depends on the election scenario in Israel. I think Prime Minister of Israel has been using this and playing it
for years.
As a political chip and as a political tool, so that he keeps staying in at the helm of the government in Israel. And I'm not so sure about the intention, but I think that in the political wisdom of all the parties involved that we should sit and negotiate.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Egypt in general has called on the Arab states to be showing more support, as you've mentioned, Ambassador Jailan Allam. How do you think this would be translated in the upcoming months, for example, not in the upcoming days?
I hate what I'm going to say, but I will say it. Where is the role of the Palestinians in all the Arab countries? I think that the Gulf countries have around 1,900,000 or something Palestinians. I don't hear their voice. I don't see their extending help to their brethren in Gaza. I hope they will be more active in this regard. And I think being more active doesn't necessarily mean disruptive, but more active in terms of inciting the governments, their host governments, and they are there working, they are not staying there in. I think inciting these governments to come forward. I think Arab countries will come forward eventually. I think they are making their preparations. But I think that the Palestinian here, the entities, the Palestinian entities in this country, and they have been there for decades, I think they should be more effective and more active in terms of calling, by taking action on themselves. I mean, if they start some kind of a campaign to raise funds or to raise assistance to send across Jordan from the Arab countries from the Gulf and the Saudi Gulf countries in general through Jordan, assistance to Gaza and the Palestinians in general, I don't think that anybody is going to stand against that. So I think there is still more to expect, and I hope that people will raise to that kind of expectation.
Speaking of the Arab League and the Arab nations, do we expect or anticipate a resolution even by the Arab League in the upcoming days, or is it too late for that?
It's never too late to take the right step. I mean, it's never too late. Actually, I would have liked very much to have some kind of an extraordinary session of the Arab League meeting to discuss that issue and to take a resolution on that to help and so on and so forth. But it didn't happen. And but I think maybe they are still waiting for the decisions of the different Arab countries to see how they can help the situation and promote assistance to the Palestinians and promote the cause and see if this is the time and what kind of a role they're going to play and what kind of support they're going, political support and material support they're going to bring to the Palestine issue, the Palestine case. I think there are preparations, quiet preparations, quiet diplomacy, but I am very optimistic that it will come in good time.
Yes, and finally, how do you see the anticipated developments that could be happening in the Palestinian territories for the upcoming days, of course, after the efforts of Egypt?
I think Egypt has set the pace for what is coming. And it has set it not only as just an immediate a step and this is it and it's just withdrawn. No, I think it's staying steadfast and it's keeping the pace and it's monitoring what is going on and it's contributing to it. And this is what we have just seen in the report, that the assistance to the Palestinians. So I think we are going to see this continuing and this is happening. And I think that the Arab countries will come forward, maybe with different scenarios, maybe with different issues. There has been a meeting of the Security Council and it has issued a statement. And I think they can build on that also, particularly that you have countries, Arab countries that are members of the Security Council. The United Nations has held a session, an extraordinary session. So we are working on this. But this kind of a situation between two warring parties needs a little bit of wisdom, of tact, and of diplomacy that is well informed and well monitoring what are the discrepancies here. And I think this is a very important part and parcel of what our two teams are doing in Palestine and in Israel. And I think we are going to build on that, and we are going to take the lead on that.
Yes, Ambassador Jailan Allam, the former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you very much.
Anytime.
Pleasure.
And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.